Buck Sexton, welcome to you. Now, you worked for the NYPD as an intelligence specialist, and you're also a lifelong New Yorker. So tell us what this all means to you and what you're seeing here.
Well, I think people are getting a sense, based on just the stories we're talking about today, of how difficult and dangerous the roughly 700,000 law enforcement officers across the country, the difficulties and dangers that they face on a day-to-day basis, and how critical, essential the work they do is, and how we've entered this phase where, because one side of the political spectrum derives political power from it, where there are these narratives about cops as the bad guys, cops as systemically racist, when not only is that incredibly damaging to law enforcement and completely undermines the kind of heroism and selflessness that you're seeing in some of these tapes where cops are taking incoming fire, but also it results in what we've seen in the last 12 months. And the reason we don't have more headlines is because the numbers aren't yet entirely official from the FBI and from the agencies that compile them. But we're looking at Emily, the worst murder rate surge in over 20 years in this country. And the cops are the ones trying to stop those murders from happening, yet the Democrat left only focuses on law enforcement as the cause of the problem. It's reckless, and people are actually losing their lives because of it.
And Tommy, you spend so much time with the law enforcement officers and their families. So tell us about what this is doing to morale. We see the spiking death rate by suicide happening all across the country. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we're seeing recruitment way down, retirement way up, and you really can't blame these officers. They already have an incredibly difficult job, and that's if everybody supports and respects them. They still have a difficult job. They still don't know if they're going to go home to their families each and every single night. And then you add into this narrative from the left and from the White House that the police force is systemically racist, as Buck said. When you have that narrative and you tell certain communities that the police are their enemy, that they are racist, that they hate people of color, this is what happens. You have people that go out there and feel almost like they're martyrs for their race or for their movement or for their cause if they do ambush or attack a law enforcement officer. We used to hold law enforcement to a high esteem in this country. We used to look at the NYPD and other officers as people that were heroic, people that we aspired to be, people that we looked to for protection, people that we could always count on, and that is what they are. But now you've got this narrative from one political party coming in so strong, especially over last summer and continuing on now, and it has not ended yet. This is what you're going to see, and this is what's going to happen. It's so damaging, it's so disgusting, and I can't help but think about the families of these officers as well. The officers sign up for this, they train for this, but their families, their husbands, their wives, their children at home watching this happening and thinking, is my loved one going to be next? Am I going to get that call that my loved one was killed in the line of duty, going out there each and every single day? They don't know if they're going to be attacked and ambushed. And I can't imagine what it feels like for them to switch on mainstream media and hear this constant rhetoric and this constant narrative that their loved ones that are going out there and putting their lives on the line are somehow racist or somehow bigoted or somehow intolerant or anything other than the great peace officers that they are. I can't imagine what it feels like for those folks. But if there are any of those folks watching, I just hope that they understand the silent majority is behind them. There are so many Americans that respect and appreciate law enforcement, and it's up to us to be loud and vocal about defending the blue, because that is the very least we can do for these officers.
You're right, Tommy. Those families pay that heavy price and sometimes ultimate price as well. Now, Kaylee, what we just showed in the beginning of this show, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not even all of the references. Currently in Delaware, for example, Officer He Cook there has been declared clinically dead after being viciously beaten when he was responding to an in-home fight. Now, the reason that he became an officer his wife shared is because 30 years ago, he was in a car accident. He was given a 50-50 chance of surviving, and it was police officers who pulled him to safety and saved his life. He said he wanted to become an officer because he wanted to do the same. He wanted to help others. And in the article that I was reading about this, there's always pop-up ads as well and embedded articles. Well, the embedded article was about how Atlanta police officers pulled to safety an unconscious man from a burning vehicle. These men and women in uniform are saving lives every day, all day. And it seems as if the narrative has completely washed that away, and that everyone, especially on the left, has forgotten this crucial aspect of these brave heroes.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'm so glad that this is the way we're starting off the show. And I'm so glad that you shared the name of the officer who passed. And we began this show by naming two of the most recent officers who were killed in the line of duty, Logan Fox and Chris Ward. And Logan Fox was 25 years old, started in the police force when he was 21. Chris Ward also killed after that 13-hour standoff in North Carolina. He was 36, left behind 2 daughters and a wife. These are heroes. When you see that imagery in Brooklyn of those officers ascending the stairs and encountering fire, they are called to a situation. They don't know what's going on. They don't know if someone is armed. They don't know if there will be a cascade of bullets raining down on them as they walk up the stairs. These are the situations our police officers are in. And by my count, it's about 17 officers who passed in April alone, who were killed in April alone, either by COVID doing their job or gunfire or the various other ways they were killed. That's about one cop dying every 48 hours. And that's a conservative estimate. These are our heroes. We need to say their names. That's why I love Officer Down Memorial page. You can go and you can see all of the officers who courageously gave their life this year alone. And I'm so glad, Emily, that you took the time to share about that Delaware officer as well.
Harris, you know, I've called 911 a good handful of times, and always on behalf of someone else, always on behalf of an emergency situation that I came upon, right? The first person coming across a horrific car accident, a woman who was drowning, the list sort of goes on. And I bring that up to say, because we've recently learned of an exchange with a professor and a college student where the professor was admonishing the student for calling these officers heroes, as Tommy pointed out. And he said, who would you call in an emergency, professor? And she said, no one. But most of the time, people are calling 911 on behalf of others who can't get that help themselves. It's forwarding this thread that we're talking about here, where these officers are putting their lives on the line to save others, and yet they're being vilified for what they do on a daily basis.
Well, we know that that professor is being disingenuous. I mean, he really would call no one. He wouldn't call 911 if his house were on fire or an intruder were there. How do we know this? Because when you look in the very cities where people have been protesting peacefully, and some of them not, who do they call when things break out and things don't go well? They call the police to come. So we know by the actions of people who may say the words that that professor said about, oh, I don't need any help. We know that we all need help at some point. Or we advocate, as you say, Emily, for those who do. We help out to get help there. And who answers that call? Who comes? The operative color that they're wearing is blue. They show up. And as Americans, we've got to remember who's in that uniform. So if there's some among us who need accountability, then let's go to the police departments, leadership, and form relationships. All of us as Americans, no matter what we look like, where we live. Because they are answering our calls for help, whether we want to make those calls or not. If you're in a position that you have to, you know that they will come. One thing that we do on Faulkner Focus is we have a ribbon, in our big studio that you and Kaylee and I will be back in next week. Yes, for a couple of days to test run. And in that ribbon, sky high, 40 feet up, are the names of the officers who have died so far this year. And we put up some from 2020 as well. Because I agree with Kaylee. Say their names. We say the names of the victims, and we should. In those investigations, we should know about them when they happen. We need to know about those in blue, too. And maybe we know their names before anything happens so that we have relationships and we can express our gratitude when they come, when we call.
Amen, Harris. And may God bless those officers' legacies.